But first, you saw it, South Australia locking up today, joining New South Wales and Victoria in hard lockdown. So 13.5 million Australians locked up in their homes tonight, and our economy in freefall. Our COVID crisis is continuing to deepen. Even as other countries are starting to accept, we just have to find a way to live with this virus. South Australians locked up at least a week, they're told. Victorians announced today another week at least. And New South Wales, the Premier's refusing to say how long the nearly now 4-week lockdown will last. Meanwhile, in Britain, they've just had their so-called Freedom Day, the end of almost all domestic COVID restrictions, despite new cases averaging 45,000 cases a day over the past week, and deaths averaging around 40 deaths a day over the past week. That sounds a lot, until you realise that every single day in the UK, more than 1,500 people die on average, and that a normal flu season kills around 15 Britons every day. These are the fundamental facts that seem to be lost since the start of this pandemic. No one lives forever. Something will get us all eventually at the end, that we have to minimise risk, but we can't reduce it to zero without basically giving up any sort of real life. And perhaps most important of all, in weighing up their decisions, politicians and officials, they can't keep treating this virus as their one and only preoccupation. It has to be considered alongside the ability of people to earn money to feed and shelter themselves, the mental health of adults, and critically, our young people, and all the other health problems like cancer that also can kill us, but that are going on undetected the longer we live in lockdown hell. Occasionally in New South Wales, officials still seem to recognise that it's important that life goes on, even in a pandemic, and that a few cases are not a catastrophe. Here in Victoria, where the Premier keeps lightening COVID to an out-of-control bushfire, it's more and more obvious that not a single case will ever be tolerated, regardless of what repeated lockdowns are doing to people's lives and mental health. I mean, gone is any pretence that Andrews is abiding by the National Cabinet's commitment to virus suppression rather than elimination.
We have a chance to be in lockdown to achieve zero cases.
One of the worst features of our response to this pandemic, which the National Royal Commission we must surely have should address, is the fact that we've never really been following any clearly thought through, publicly articulated plan. No one in leadership anywhere, not a single Premier, has ever given us a formal statement on exactly what any of our states have been trying to achieve, other than playing virus whack-a-mole wherever it appears. And the health advice, by which every ad hoc decision is always justified, well, that's never made public to anyone. Now, never in all my time of working inside government have I seen a more secretive time in our country. Even when we were dealing with national security issues like planned terror attacks or taking on Islamic State, parliamentary committees got briefings. There was oversight from the independent security monitors, but on this, nothing. Have a look back at the National Pandemic Plan, last updated in August 2019. Now, it's supposed to be the blueprint for managing pandemics, yet it never anticipated widespread lockdowns, certainly not for the relatively mild pandemic that this has been by historical standards. Yet that plan, first formulated back in the days of the Howard government and regularly updated, it was junked almost as soon as this virus hit. With the partial exception of New South Wales, there's been a fixation on the total elimination of this virus, yet throughout, we've been importing new virus cases from overseas, virus returning travellers that inevitably leak into the community due to the inescapable human errors of hotel quarantine. Maintaining zero community cases while continuing to import the virus from overseas was always mission impossible. Yeah, that's been our never quite articulated strategy for 18 months now, and the result? Repeated failures. If we were serious about elimination, serious about zero cases, then the planes should have stopped. Because keeping on importing the virus has stopped life as we know it. Today, would it surprise you to know that Melbourne's clocked up its 178th day of hard lockdown. What a sorry indictment that is on our collective failure of governance. Tonight, this nation of 25 million people is more than half its population in hard lockdown, stuck in this seemingly interminable cycle of crisis, media press conferences and a stop-start life, while the wider world is changing fast. Today, 38 countries, the US, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, the whole of the EU and the whole of NATO, they released statements condemning a massive Chinese cyber attack in January that disrupted IT systems around the world. There are now 2 Chinese spy ships off the coast of Queensland, spying on the regular Talisman Sabre military exercises that we're conducting now with the United States. Forget COVID. That'll eventually pass. It's the China challenge that will define the next century. Yet official Australia is so COVID obsessed that almost nothing else is receiving sustained attention. The sooner everyone can get vaccinated and from the premiers down, everyone get back to normal life, kids back in school, we start treating COVID as just another disease, the better for our long-term well-being. Because, take it from me, governments grind to a halt in a crisis. And all the other important work that should be done, well, it falls away. And this paralysis will take years to recover from. And given the dragon breathing fire to our north, we don't have a whole lot of time to waste.